Welcome, everybody, to a SaltyChillersEntertainment podcast. This is Herodarkness.
It's all logic.
Richnumbers. Suspect.
And Suspect's one of our friends joining us with today. And as always, guys, if you enjoy our podcast stuff, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button with that bell so you can always be up to the latest whenever we post a video. And today, we're talking about what can affect the lifespan of a video game. So
I want to start off by saying the matchmaking. Only reason I say that is because I've been playing a lot of Dissidia in solo queues, and I will say the matchmaking can be an issue for a game's lifespan. Mainly because one of the biggest things for a lot of games is the PvP side for it. And if that is horrible to the point it's unplayable, then that's going to turn a lot of people off and push a lot of the player base away. One thing that I was kind of somewhat looking at is Take For Honor, for instance. They lost a lot of their player base, and a lot of things I was reading just happens to do with the matchmaking, the connection itself, and also the unbalancedness of the characters in that game. And that has actually quite a base in For Honor. So one of the things is the multiplayer can kill a lifespan to a game.
That I can agree. That there has hope of matchmaking. It's not fun to play. You spend too much time waiting to get matched with something, and then it ends up to look more like a waste of time.
I would also inject saying that if the matchmaking isn't done properly or handled well enough, you're going to be leaving and upset more often than not because you're not enjoying and having a fun time because of it. You can take any game that has the multiplayer PvP aspect with matchmaking and you find yourself running against teams that are stacked, teams that are just playing well together, and you're a solo queue. It's not fun.
Take another thing, dedicated servers versus non-dedicated servers, or player-based servers, in terms, or connection-wise. That you notice a big difference between nice servers that aren't laggy versus player servers, which, if the person you're connected to has really horrible servers, you're gonna know, and it's gonna hurt quite a bit.
There are several instances we can pull from. Destiny is a good example. Even the Dark Souls series, for how good they are, their connections aren't always the greatest when it comes to their PvP aspect because it's a player-to-player connection.
Yeah, exactly. It all depends on if you're joining them or if they're coming into your world. It's so RNG, and it's really difficult to do much.
And I'm kind of curious of Suspect's thoughts on this aspect of the PvP, because I know he is a big PvP player in the Destiny aspect of things.
Yeah, PvP is everything, and if your matchmaking sucks, I do agree that that would affect it a lot. I think for one, things like skill-based matchmaking, for instance, versus just like regular old matchmaking where you get thrown into the ring with anybody. I think that can also kind of like affect the matchmaking aspect to it.
Yeah.
I was just multiplayer games. Matchmaking, if it's a PvP-based game, can make a could affect lifespan for those who enjoy stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would also say, even if it isn't a dedicated PvP type game, even if it has PvP in with other things, you still need that matchmaking so you can still have an enjoyable experience.
Even for PvE, you know, whenever you get dropped into, you know, a strike or something, just talking about Destiny, you know, if you get dropped into a strike with teammates that are, you know, have a bad history of not being able to finish strikes or something, you know, you know, that kind of affects the way you think of it too, because you can't really enjoy to do it because you're having to carry, you know, badly match-made teammates along with yourself, you know. So, I mean, if anything, they're going to have skill-based, and I would like to see it be in something like PvE, where, you know, they match you with people of your same skill level so that you're not trying to carry people, drag people through strikes, or, you know what I mean, or just, you know, missions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one game I play, and there's a competitive mode in it, and me and my friend would join up and do pairs, so as we match with two Vandals, and there's a couple of times where it was like me and you carrying the team. And like this, yes, we maybe capture power, so we can match better, but sometimes like this feels so strange. Why are we sort of carrying the team?
Yeah. Jade Rabbit, really?
Aside from just pure matchmaking and things like that, the content is another thing that affects the lifespan. You have to have good content or enough content to keep people entertained.
Yeah.
Another
I
thing,
think
just
the
going
biggest
back
thing
to
is
Destiny,
variety.
for instance. Yeah, that too. Like take Destiny for one thing. If you don't, if it wasn't for the fact that things reset on a weekly basis, you wouldn't have anything to do once you completed everything, because what would be the point of running it again if it never resets, so you never get anything for it?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So you say the way they get rewards is also affects the stuff.
Yeah.
Thus, if it's not rewarding you according to what you feel as if your efforts, you're probably not going to go back.
I would also say
Yeah.
not so much the rewards, but also the amount of various activities that you can do. For instance, I know Destiny 2 received a lot of flack for lack of content at launch, because okay, you have your strikes, you have your crucible, you have your public event stuff that you can do, and then you have your raid, and that's it. But it's not so much that that's all there was to do. Where the lack of content came from is the fact that there is only a handful of crucible maps, PvP maps.
Okay, well, you also have to look at where Destiny 1 was when Destiny 2 came out. A lot of people were expecting it to have the same amount or more content at start. So they were not underwhelmed. What's the word I'm looking for?
They felt as if there wasn't enough content,
Yeah.
and I can see why they went from game with 2 years worth of content, and we get a game that doesn't even have what it feels like a year's worth of content.
Like maybe a half a year's worth. So a lot of people were disappointed, and I can understand that. I was myself. I was like, well, of course, me, I'm really never in a big rush to complete everything. So I mean, even now, there's still a lot of things I haven't done, and or yeah, things like that, because I'm just not in any big rush. For the most part, I'm casual until it comes to PvP things. So it's like I'm never in a rush to really do anything. So content-wise, for me, isn't too big of an issue to an extent.
Because me and you discussed at length with some of the things to do. Yeah, you go and do certain aspects of the game and you get new stuff, but are only found in the PvE arena of things, and you're like, I don't care about that. Give me the stuff for the PvP. And I like the loadout I have. Why do I need to change my loadout? And along with that, where a lot of the fans get frustrated at with the Destiny 2 content at launch was, why am I only have like 5 or 6 strikes? Why do I only have maybe 7 or 8 crucible maps? Why do I only have so much stuff? And the
So limited
expectations
things.
limit and expectations sometimes that we in the communities that we're a part of, we may put too high of an expectation and we get upset, which can then in turn affect. And another aspect,
So you're saying the height of the game could affect the lifespan?
yes, and then the changes that the studio decides to make before launch happens. You can take for, just going with that. Sometimes we can take Fortnite. It's big, it's popular, a lot of people enjoy it, and what has kept that game going around a lot longer than compared to H1N1 or even PUBG is the fact that they're quick on giving updates and releasing new stuff, even if it's just a new skin. There's something new for the player.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that can affect lifespan of games is just the support, the amount of support that the developers offer and give through feedback from their community. Like, I mean, look at The Division, for instance. That game wouldn't be what it is today without, the Ubisoft and Massive working to take feedback from the community. You know what I mean? And then look at Forsaken, for
That's
instance.
that's
Like,
actually the biggest thing right there, is the developers listening to the community. If they don't listen to the community, the game will suffer and fall apart and become dead. And I'm not talking about just a figure reference where there's still probably 1,000 or let's say more than
Yeah.
say 5,000 or so, completely dead. If they can't listen to the community and give feedback and try to work on that and change things, the game is going to suffer so hard, and to the point where it's unrevivable.
And that's a big thing, lifespan of the game. The Division could have easily died between year 1 and year 2, but because they went back and said, no, we're not going to let this game die, we're going to make this game work, we're going to implement the changes. I came back a year later, I'm like, this game is almost completely different. It's not like I didn't recognize it, it's like it's a familiar friend with a little bit of something different, something new, where they've added things where like, hey, I like this, and other things like, okay, I don't know why they did it, but it kept the longevity of the game, where it pretty much is one of the games that made a turnaround in what happened compared to launch.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then you have games like For Honor, where it wasn't exactly dead on arrival, it just didn't receive the support it needed from the studio to keep it going.
I played the open beta for the game. That it felt nice. It's just It wasn't a game for me. I enjoyed the open beta, but I knew the game wasn't for me. And it's sad to hear that game sort of trash after launch shortly after. But this probably wasn't. They had an interesting concept from season to season, but it could be that the seasons took forever to do, or felt more like it was always a one-sided fight, thus poor matchmaking.
That's kind of one thing with what I said back toward the beginning is you have to have balance across things.
That looks like you're creating a PvP game. Matchmaking could help make or break the game.
And our characters.
Yes. Thus, what if we go to do more of a PvE-like game or single-player-like game? What could affect how popular that game is, and maybe 5-10 years down the road, what could help it get it remastered or brought back to the fans?
I would say it's the content in the game. Is the story compelling where you want to go back and play it again? Is the mechanics smooth and it's fluid to allow multiple playthroughs, to allow conversation of it to happen? Or is it clunky? because if it's clunky, no one's gonna like it. There's a couple weeks ago, you had the game called Detroit Become Human that was released, and people are loving it. People are giving it solid reviews of 7 or 8 out of 10, and saying this is probably one of the best games that Quantic Dreams have put out, especially in recent years. And that alone is making some people who haven't touched this type of thing seem interested into the game, because the story itself is so compelling. The fact that all your choices, especially big ones, do matter. Just as something as little as how one character interacts and makes a decision with in their storyline affects another character's storyline and what you can and can't do. Rich was telling me how, depending on how you play as one character, can directly affect the other character, especially where you're on the run, and depending on how you play as another character will affect that character that's on the run.
And one of the endings I got due to the way I was playing one character allowed me to get the ending I wanted for that character. So and that's a game I've been looking forward to, which is making the complete difference. It's not, well, okay, I've been the good guy the entire game, last second I'm going to be bad guy. It's more, if I've been good guy the entire game, me switching to bad guy, it's going to be 5 times harder. Because I'm now breaking, there's still one decision I could make that could have affected the outcome. But due to the way I was playing said character, making that decision would have then been out of character for the person I was playing as. Yes, I saw a key moment where it would have flipped the entire way I was playing around. But at the same time, it would have been out of character for my character to do.
And I would say that's what would be one thing that would allow a game to become remastered years later. Taking a look at the Dark Souls remaster that was released the same weekend as Detroit Become Human, and it's because how well that game was received and how people just loved it that allowed players to go back, and From Software's like, yep, let's go ahead and make this game remastered. We'll give it to another studio and let them work on it a little bit, and let's re-release it to the public. Do you guys disagree with some of the things that we've talked about?
Most things are fairly spot on, and have key aspects to a game, for the most part. Well, also the difficulty of the game as well. That's another thing. If something is incredibly too easy and don't provide any way to increase the difficulty, that can turn people away. Well, at least for a lot of people anyway. If something is too easy, they won't find enjoyment, and they'll probably just toss it away to the side.
Yeah, and so the content and the difficulty, being able to change the difficulty, does matter for a lot of people if they want to go back and play it again. That's why Dark Souls is so popular, because you can go through and create a new game plus where things are harder.
Granted, it may not seem that way, but there are some things that can and will kill you. Just take the Soul series, for instance. You could be like, high level, but if even the smallest and simplest thing can and will kill you if you're not careful.
Like not dodging.
Yeah. That's
you're
the
looking
thing.
into that. That game has such replayability because one, it's a challenging game. It's not a game you can sit down and play with your eyes closed. I will clap and commend you if you can do that.
It's not a game for everyone.
No.
Either.
But those who actually like the game go back to it. I'm looking at let's talk about Ocarina of Time. One of the most fan-favorite Zelda games that is out to date. That game has it came out, and then when Wind Waker came out due to some stuff that happened up with them not releasing a couple of Zelda games in the making because they thought them out. They released the Master Mode of the Wind Waker for those who pre-ordered it. If I have facts correct.
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you.
Because
I
I
don't
wanted to
know
do that.
that.
And then they redid it for the 3DS, where you have the regular mode and the Master Mode. Thus, Ocarina of Time has been redone once just for that, and then it was redone later for the 3DS.
But that is one of the most iconic Legend of Zelda games, but because of how well it was done, and the amount of content and the amount of replayability that game offers, and the amount of things you can do in the game, that has allowed it to be redone that many times, and no one that I know of freaks out about it.
And that is true. It is well put together.
Now, Suspect, do you have any questions or any other thoughts that has come across your mind as we've been discussing things?
No, not really questions.
Aside from the fact we probably hit everything on the freaking head.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say I think keeps games alive more than anything is having something that makes it unique from others. Like, for instance, The Division had the Dark Zone, you know, an open world PvP. Like, that's something that no other game really had done, or really done well before. You know what I mean? And
Well, it was a mix of... It was the legitimate sense of player versus everything. You can work together with other people, at the same time they can turn around and stab you in the back at the last second. So it was true teamwork, at the same time you don't entirely know if you can trust them if they're randoms.
Yep.
Yeah, because that is really important, is what makes this game, that's a looter game, different than all the other looter games that are out there, or what makes this first-person shooter game different than all the other first-person shooter games, and etc, etc, etc.
I mean, when you look about it,
and how they portray it.
Yeah, and when you look at it, like, Destiny was probably the first game on console to really be a true, like, first-person looter shooter type thing, you know?
More of a sci-fi in a way.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they were like kind of the first people to make like a MMO type game on console, you know?
Yes.
Then the Division quickly followed after that, and now they're making Anthem. You know what I mean? They're all the same basic concept. They just have different stories and
different ways of going about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they may be similar in genre, but they all feel very different in play.
And they all play very different as well. And so these are just some of our thoughts and opinions of what makes a game be able to last longer and go on for years or 2 years or even 10 years plus. Using World of Warcraft as an example, it has lasted longer than a lot of MMOs because of the amount of content and the way Blizzard handled that game. Yes, it's been on a downhill slope for a bit, but that's an unusual thing for an MMO to last in for as long as it
that
does.
game is probably actually now being outdone by Final Fantasy 14. I've been seeing some things about it to where 14 has now overtaken World of Warcraft in terms of being the MMO. And I've sat and did some things, and there are some things I've noticed where with World of Warcraft, once you select a character in class, you are permanently stuck with that. You cannot change. But take Final Fantasy XIV, for instance, like, yes, you may start as 1, but you're not permanently locked to it. You can switch to anything and pretty much be whatever class you want prior you get them unlocked. So there's a lot more diversity, variety in what you can do. And take that game's been going on for quite a bit, and from what I've heard and things like that, it's improved a good bit. So it's, fairly playable, and there's still a pretty huge player base for that game. So I mean, whatever it did or whatever it's been doing it right to keep its player base.
Which is good, but it's also making sure it's adding content that the player base wants.
Yeah, I would say, just for instance, they are doing a maintenance either within a day or two. I'm not quite sure for what, but I'm pretty sure some people I play with will end up telling me, and they're always buffing, things that needs to be fixed, whether it's, under level or just doesn't compare to other things. And even just the basic dungeons, things like that, they did made a mistake with the whole loot and alliance raids and stuff like that. The community wasn't happy, and they're actually going back to reverting that change, which actually may be what they're doing in this maintenance, is reverting that update and going back to what it was before. And that is an example of listening to your community, especially when it's as huge as this. It can destroy a game if a lot of people, up and leave.
Yes, and listening to the community is one way to help keep the game going, especially if the changes is the design to make the game better and to help the game out. Just during this 2018 E3, DICE came out and announced for the Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, they're finally adding the Clone Wars. They've been aware of that. They've been wanting to add that. But because of the Star Wars movies that's been released, they've been releasing content related to the Star Wars movies, such as Last Jedi and the Han Solo Star Wars movie. Now they're finally adding the Clone Wars stuff that the fans have been wanting since launch, and yes, we are listening. We have implemented changes. They've made changes to how the progression system worked, versus being all loot boxes. Now it's all straight, is if you play as this class, you will level up that class. You don't have to worry about the RNG on your loot boxes now for you to get the level up, to make your player become better and stronger, or your class. And they've also announced other content and what else are added to the game. And me and Richnumbers here, we've discussed that in our Star Wars Battlefront 2 Clone Wars DLC thoughts video that we'll have posted alongside this as well. And these are just things that we have found that has made a game, through our observation, be able to last as long as they've lasted, or go out as quickly as they go out. And thank you everybody for tuning in and listening, and leave a comment below of what you thought, and if you feel like there's anything else that can make a game live longer or die off sooner in the comment section below. This has been a Salty Chillers Entertainment podcast. This is Herodarkness.
Logic.
Richnumbers.
Suspect.
And as always, guys, stay salty.
God for the ones that we shelter.